Welcome to Experts Unleashed, a podcast that aims to uncover how professionals and entrepreneurs transform their experience into income while making a positive impact in the world. I'm your host, Joel Irway, and over the past 4 years, I've helped entrepreneurs develop and launch their expert-based businesses to grow past 6 and 7 figures per year. Now, a professional expert serves their community through paid training, education, or service, and this podcast will show you how to design and execute your plan to become a 6 or 7 figure expert without a big team. So, let's get started. Hey, what's going on, experts? It's Joel Irway here with another episode of Experts Unleashed. Now, I just hopped off my interview for you today with the fascinating and talented John DeMato. Now, John is a lifestyle portrait photographer and image content creator who works with high-level entrepreneurs and thought leaders of various industries to produce high-quality, highly captionable images that present informational, entertaining, and inspiring aspects of their brand to their followers. Now, he's in a very unique niche, and John's story was fascinating because he came from a very stressful career of TV production, working on popular shows like Maury Povich. So when I talked to him, I wanted to know about his journey and how he transitioned from that highly stressful career to what he's doing now. And John is an amazing guy and an amazing influencer. So when you listen to this interview, listen to his story because he went through quite a few aha moments of how he transitioned from his previous life to a career where he never even really knew that he had no aspirations to become an entrepreneur or especially to monetize his expertise. So enjoy this episode. We talked about a lot of fascinating things that I'm sure will resonate with you in your career. So let's get to it. John, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, Joel. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so we're going to have a lot of fun. And I am super excited because we are going to be talking about different experiences in your life that have gotten you to where you are today. And specifically, you're somebody who has worked on the Maury show as a film producer, and you've had other sorts of experiences. I won't speak for you. I'm going to throw it over to you. Why don't you give yourself a mercifully brief introduction? What do you do today? And then we'll kind of work backwards and figure out how you got here.
Okay, great. Yeah. So I'm a branded lifestyle portrait photographer, and I collaborate with speakers, authors, coaches, and other high-level folks like that, thought leaders, change agents. And basically what I do is I work with them to create image content portfolios that they can leverage to get the visibility that they want on social media by presenting these authentic, powerful, purposeful portraits that we capture during their sessions.
So I checked out some of the work that you've done. I mean, it's fascinating stuff. I mean, brilliant work.
Thank you.
What I'm curious about is, I don't want this to sound wrong, but it's kind of like an obscure niche. Like, how did you discover the branded lifestyle portrait photographer niche? Or maybe it's bigger than I give it credit for. I mean, me not being a photographer, maybe I just don't realize how big that market is.
Right. Well, the phrase branded lifestyle portrait is actually my phrase. I created that.
Cool.
But basically what I did was provide my unique spin on what lifestyle portraiture is. Because what I noticed a lot of other photographers doing was that they shoot this beautiful work, but it's very editorial and it feels very magazine-like, and it's trying to capture this one awesome shot. And what I felt was missing was the fact that, thought leaders need a lot more than just the one shot. They need to capture a variety of images in order to visually punctuate the stories that they share about their business, their brand, and their lives. So what I decided to do was create a niche specific to these speakers and authors and thought leaders that would cater more to serve their needs rather than just getting pretty photos. I mean, yes, we want them to look good in all the photos, of course, but that's the base level. That's the foundation. From there, everything else grows. And what grows with these images are these stories. Because ultimately, what these thought leaders are doing is trying to help people get unstuck wherever it is that they're stuck. And they are attracted to these speakers and authors because they can help them with that. So the only way that they can find out that this type of help exists is if they can find these people. And that's where the photos come in.
So I'm curious, right? That's so I love it. Like, it's super defined, super clear value proposition of what you do for your clients.
Right.
But like, okay, so thought leaders and change agents, right? So I play in that same space. Is it difficult to explain the value of, like, so let's say you're talking to a prospective client, right? And you give them, your pitch, you give them your spiel, right? How often do they get it? Like, if it's your first time talking to a prospect, like, how often do they really get what you do? And the reason why I'm asking that question is, like, if someone were to come to me and say, hey, I need, I get lifestyle portrait photographer. I had some professional photos done about a year and a half ago. I get it. But really, I did it for, like, in my mind, I'm like, I need it for LinkedIn. I need it, like, the still shots that you talked about earlier, right?
Yep.
Are these people coming to you because they know that they want those different action lifestyle shots? Or do you have to kind of convince them that they need to take that next step? Does that make sense?
It does. That's a really good question. And the answer to that is that's why I put out so much content on my blog and on my social channels to educate those thought leaders on what exactly it is that they need. They know that they want the visibility. They know that they need to leverage social. They know that they need these images to get for speaker submissions and for profile pictures and to update their website. But what they don't understand is what exactly the meat and potatoes of that is. And that's where I come in, because I'm able to define for them the types of images that work best for them. It's about extracting those really interesting bits of information from them, meaning, who they are, who they serve, what makes them unique, what does work look like to them, how do they brainstorm, what does the consultation with a client look like, is it one-to-one, is it one-to-many, do they do speaking opportunities, have they written a book, what inspires them? So all of these different things we talk about before we even think about putting a camera in front of them. And once I have that information, then I'm able to actually help them figure out what they need. But 9 times out of 10, I have to explain what I do in a way that truly resonates with them. But again, they know they need it, not exactly sure what they need.
Cool. Yeah, that's exactly where I was going with that. So I love it. All right. So take me through an example, right? Because this is fascinating to me. This whole, like I mentioned earlier, I love getting into artists' minds and creative minds, because a lot of times it's very difficult to explain, like, why and how you do what you do up here and how you actually make it work, right? So give me an example of, maybe we can talk about 2 of your clients who were in similar niches but had a little bit of a different angle.
Right.
And let me give you an example. When you were going through what you just went through, you said, oh, do they serve one-to-one clients, or do they serve one-to-many clients? In your mind, what would make those shots different? Like, as you're going through and you're planning, like, what would, like, those aren't too different enough descriptions.
No, it is. It is. I know where you're going with that. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So for the one-to-one to one-to-many, for example, some of my clients are of the, go to the person, meet up with them directly, have a seat with them, have a chat. That visually looks very different from, say, one person who does workshops or retreats. And there's many people. So the way that I would and have visually punctuated those kinds of stories that they want to talk about is, we've just had the client bring in a friend, or we've had the makeup artist. Actually, one time I had a client who, she mostly serves women, right? So she had a female friend that was supposed to come over to her apartment while we were shooting. And unfortunately, she canceled last minute. So the only other person that was available for us to use as a stand-in was a guy, a makeup artist. So he ended up putting on a scarf over his head. He had earrings already. He had a t-shirt, but he pulled the shirt like down so it looked like it was like a top to like a blouse or a dress or something. And I shot around that, and that's how we got around it. But when it comes to the one-to-manys, what I like to do is, especially if I'm shooting in a co-working space, I like to have them writing on a whiteboard or have them talking in front of the whiteboard in front of the room. Make it feel like there's people in the room. Mm-hmm. So long story short, there are many ways to skin that cat. It's really location specific and power in terms of who's around that we can use for the shots. But there's always a way around it.
Cool. All right. So one of the things that I saw while I was doing some research on you, I was watching one of your videos and you had this quote that resonated really, really well with me. And so like talking about like how you explain and like how you really became who you are. And and I love this quote. You said, the fact that you even need these types of images means that you are doing something great with your life. Like that was a really powerful statement that to me, as let's say a potential prospect or potential customer, like something about that really, really stuck. I mean, have you ever said that to a client and they're like, oh, okay, like I get it now? Or I guess where did you come up with that statement?
I got really, to be honest, Joel, I got tired of hearing people bitch, moan, and complain about how much they hate their photos. And I'm like, listen, stop treating this like a funeral or like you're going to get your teeth, extracted at the dentist. Stop it. It's not a funeral, it's a celebration. And that's where the rest of that quote came from. And I have said that probably, I don't know, to 10, 15 clients. Because it's true. Mm-hmm. The fact that you have the resources, the desire, and the need to get it, to invest in a branded lifestyle portrait session, it means something because you're at a certain level and you're looking for more. That's pretty awesome. Not a lot of people have that opportunity because they don't put themselves in that position like you do. So as a result, that's why it's something that needs to be celebrated. And you need to step back and savor that moment on that level.
Awesome. Love it, man. I want to kind of rewind a little bit now, right? So we talked about what you're currently doing now and how awesome and amazing of a job that you're doing with your business, your brand, the whole nine yards. But take us back to the journey, right? So I know that you spent quite a bit of time as a television producer, and you even worked on the Maury television show for about 9 years, right? So take me there, because you also have a quote somewhere I found that you said you were angry for a good part of the first part of your professional life. So, like, why? What was happening during that time?
There were a lot of great things that came from my experience in television, and specifically working on Maury. And I apply a lot of what I learned from working on that show to what I do now. It's why I have all of the really interesting, unique angles that I leverage, because I shoot with the mindset of a videographer and a producer, and that makes the images inherently unique. But as far as the day-to-day, it was a grind. It kind of felt like I was doing the same thing over and over again every single day. And the challenge began to wane as the years got on. And I started thinking to myself, what am I doing? Where am I going? What's my purpose? And then once my mother died, that really inspired me to get off my ass and start to figure things out, because, it really hit home that we only have this merry-go-round one time. And it's really important that we figure out what it is that lights us up every day, because it's precious what we have and we take it for granted on many occasions. I took it for granted. And I was just resentful and angry and very unhappy, and it all came to a head, and then I just had to let it go. And this journey has been up and down even further, and up and way down. And it's been all over the place. But, being an entrepreneur, being a business owner, being someone who, works to monetize my art in a way that doesn't compromise my integrity, it's a pretty awesome experience and it's a pretty awesome life. It's not easy all the time, but it's definitely worth it.
So, did you ever know that you had aspirations to be an entrepreneur or a business owner? No?
Never. Never wanted it, never asked for it, never looked into it as a kid. I grew up in a household where it was get a job, have health insurance, be smart about it, stability. And then I go ahead and just jump out the window and completely throw that all out once it'll be 4 years in a couple of months. So it's been interesting.
Can you point to a specific story or a specific circumstance that was happening during your professional career? I'll call it employed careers, not that you're not employed now, but like when you're working for somebody else.
Yeah.
Can you point to a specific story that said, like, that triggered, like, hey, I need to start considering other options, right? Was there some specific circumstance that was like, man, I now know this is not for me, right? And I have to consider other options. Did you ever have that one moment?
It was many moments. And it came to a head with my mom,
Yeah.
passing away. That really was the spark. It still took about 8 months after that moment to happen, but that was probably the tipping point for me. It really got me thinking that even though the idea of working for myself is absolutely terrifying, it's never something I want. What I began to realize was that the stuff that I want to do, I'm not going to find this in a full-time job with health benefits and a consistent paycheck. It just doesn't exist. So that's it just, my circumstances and my desires for more led me to somewhere that I never thought I would go.
So after your mother passed,
Yeah.
right? Did you know that was the turning point because you weren't able to spend time with her, or was it just kind of like, hey, I realize now that time's running out for everybody only has a limited amount of time on this earth, and I think, like, what specifically about that was like, okay, I've really had so much frustration with what's going on previously. Like, can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it was a combination of things. It was just thinking to myself that I don't want to be in this position and look back and think to myself, gee, maybe I should have pursued other things instead of just taking what was handed to me. And that really scared the hell out of me. It did, because it was the first time that I had ever experienced someone so close dying, and then it really just brought home the fact that I don't want to be that person. I don't want to leave stuff on the table. There's something within me that needs to be shared, and it's something that will fulfill me, and it will serve others, and it will just create this sense of fulfillment that I, up to that point, had not really experienced.
Mm-hmm.
I had experienced it in small doses, and I definitely was extremely dedicated to what I did in television. But there wasn't that sense of, ooh, I'm making a difference. I'm making a difference in my way. Like, I understand that I'm not curing cancer, and I'm not sending a rocket ship into space. But what I do does greatly impact those I serve. And once I figured that out, that really was the spark that got me through the tough times of figuring out this whole niche and where I'm going and how to market it and who to talk to and how to get it going.
So so after your mother passed, did you just walk in and say, hey, listen, I'm done? And did you leave your career and your security blanket?
No, it was about 8 months.
Okay, so it was 8 months after that.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, as I was getting closer to, because we have a little bit of a hiatus in June and July. The show doesn't really tape, so when we got back in late July, it was just like it all hit me. I'm like, I got to get the hell out of here. So, yeah.
So okay, so you made the decision. You're like, okay, great, got to make a big change in my life, right? So how did you now then like over the course of those 8 months, I mean, had you ever had any side gigs? Had you ever had any sort of, you did have side gigs?
Yeah, I was shooting headshots on the side for, at that point, professionally for about 2 to 3 years. And it was okay, low pocket money here and there. It wasn't sustainable as was, but it definitely gave me hope that this is something that I can work around. And kind of as my first foray into entrepreneurship, I was going in straight up headshots. And it wasn't, again, it kind of felt like a factory again. It was studio headshots, gray background, same lighting setup, same thing. And it's like, don't get me wrong, I love them, and that is a huge foundational piece along with the video experience to what I do now with the branded portraits. But yeah, it was like, if I'm gonna market something, it's like it still didn't feel like enough, and that kind of sparked off this, what I refer to as a bit of a creative crisis, trying to really, it's one thing to look at what other photographers are doing. I can do that. That's fine. I can replicate that. And I did that. And it's extremely unfulfilling. But it's the life cycle of a creative. It's imitation, it's borrowing, and then it's adapting, and then it's, creating something that's you. And that's how I kind of, through that struggle, kind of really figured out after the first year that, there needs to be something else. And then the spark to get this current brand that I have now was through the help of another client who basically helped me define what it is that I do based on her needs. So it all kind of worked out.
I mean, it kind of sounds like that's what you help your clients do, is you help define them, like, in a way. I mean, you're creating branded images. And I call this, but everybody, any expert, particularly solopreneurs, right? We have this really, really difficult challenge of how do we explain what the hell we do, right? It's like, we can help other people, but it's like we have this expert's curse, which is we're way too close. And we don't really know. It's hard for us to, usually takes a lot of time to figure out what is it that we do for other people? Like, what do we really do? What is our core brand?
And Joel, it changes. It's not like not like what you say now about who you serve and why is the same thing as it was a year ago. It's different. I mean, and I think that's one of the main things that young entrepreneurs really need to understand. It's that it's never done. This is never done. Growth never stops if you don't want it to. You want to keep going up and forward and moving, you're going to have to change, because we all grow as human beings, and the same thing occurs in our business and with our brands. It's always changing. But as far as how I, dissect everything down to the bare essentials of what I do, it's a pretty simple sentence. I help those who help others. That's it.
Love it. So you mentioned that your pivot away from, still headshots, you said that was fulfilling, right? And you said we're always evolving. Your brand is always evolving, right? So you're doing something much different now. But you mentioned one client helped you kind of get to where you are now with the branded, lifestyle portrait photography. Can you tell me that story? Like, I mean, were you looking for ways to evolve, or what happened there?
Yeah, it was during that creative crisis period that I was talking about earlier. A client of mine, her name is Pia. She's a badass coach, personal branding person, author. And she was putting out a book. And she needed images not only for the book cover, but she also needed images for her social, because up to that point, she was not extremely active on social. And her publisher basically said, you need to get a presence. So she knew me through networking, and I had shown her one day event that she had in Manhattan. And she reached out a couple months after that and was like, I need some portraits and I need to do this, and go. And I'm like, well, what kind of portraits? I don't know. What kind of portraits do you think I should shoot, John? So that's how I kind of came up with the format for the things that I shoot. Because the one thing that she didn't want were just glammy kind of just, good, just good. There had to be some meat there for her to actually, write stories to. And that's kind of where I get the whole visual punctuation piece. It's about complementing the stories, not replacing the stories, and not being bigger than the stories that they share. It's supposed to work in synergy as a way to get people's attention on the feed with the image and then really immerse themselves in that story so they can really learn something. And yeah, so we shot a bunch of shots of her, studio type shots, working on her computer, consulting with a client, and shot some nice shots outside for her speaker submissions, and it was really eye-opening. It's funny, halfway through the shoot, we're walking back from the park to their studio, and I turned to her husband, I go, man, I could kind of do this for other people. I think this is kind of fun. I like this format. He goes, yeah, dude, you do that. Like, all right. And that was it. That was it. That's how it happened.
So did she must have known then that this was your first client in this format, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she and her husband actually helped me focus my my website to get to a place where it visually explained everything through the images, through the whole thing. So yeah, it was a game changer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so important. It's so important. Like, especially like even with like my journey 4 years ago when I started, it's like the major pivot point was something that popped up and I had no experience doing before, which, my main business is webinars. And somebody asked me, can you help me with a webinar? Sure as shit. Like, like I did it. And that became everything. Like, it was like that one moment where somebody asks you to do something, you just seize it. You're like, yeah, like I can definitely do that. I'll give it a shot, and then look what happens. So I love it, man. Okay. So great. You get the first one under your belt, right? And obviously you're going through like, and as you're shooting this, you already said it. You're like, man, I can really do this.
Mm-hmm.
How then did it now become the thing? Like, so, I mean, did you immediately make that shift saying, hey, I'm no longer doing portraits? Or maybe you're still doing portraits, but like, how did you now start to market that and like get more clients? How'd you get your second client in the lifestyle?
Well, the first step was building the actual website to have, the social proof that this is slightly different from what other lifestyle portrait photographers do. Again, my goal was never to reinvent the wheel. It was just meant to put a nice, new rim on it. So that's kind of how I approached it. And before I started getting more paid clients, I practiced because this was new to me. I'm shooting these things in a slightly different way than what I was doing before, and I wanted to get some practice. So I shot a bunch of friends and colleagues and got some experience, got enough of that assets to actually leverage on the website. And then from there is when I started putting out the word that, hey, I'm open for business. And it kind of went from there.
So you used other, worked with other clients, or friends and family or whatever, friends and other clients and built up that demand by showing, hey, this is what I do. Like these are the results that, that I do in this space and or in this new niche.
Right, because what I had prior to that was the basic studio. Like it wasn't the same feel. It wasn't the same vibe. It didn't have the same intention or purpose. The authenticity and the personality and the expression was there because that's been my thing ever since I started. Picking up a camera and shooting people. I understood the importance of not just making someone look good, but you need them to look authentic and it needs to feel natural. Mm-hmm. So that's always been there. But then once we incorporated the lifestyle piece, the people working on the computer, the people talking to someone, the people from the front of the stage, writing on the whiteboard, whatever it is, working on their phone, all those different types of activities that these entrepreneurs leverage in order to get their work done or communicate with the world, their thought leadership, that was the different piece. So I needed to visually capture that. And I did for a good month or so, just practicing. And like I said, It was a learning curve. It was a learning curve because it was approaching shoots in a slightly different way.
Mhm.
So, but it was awesome. You know, I'm happy. I'm happy with the decision to do
Yep.
that.
So I want to ask a question that for people who are listening, right? If they're a solopreneur, and they're, let's say, doing some freelance gigs on the side, and they're working one-on-one with clients. Like you work one-on-one with clients.
Yep.
Like for me, I think it would be extremely. I don't know if I could do it because I feel like with you kind of get like one shot, right? And maybe I'm misunderstanding this, but like you get one day of shooting or a certain block of hours. Like,
Yes. That's usually how it works.
yep, yep. So I want to know, like, what's the biggest mistake that you made in the professional world of working one-on-one with clients? You only get one shot to get these images, and I want to try and relate it to. I want to try and relate it to other people working one-on-one.
What mistakes have I made? Well, what mistakes have I not made? It, from process in terms of how to manage time on a session. I've run into the challenge of allowing myself to feel like this shot, this moment, this outfit, we're good. We need to move on. At the beginning, I had this issue where I would just overload the hell out of the front of the session because I was like, well, let's try this and this and this, and then you learn over time. It's like, don't waste all the good stuff with like one outfit and shoot like 100. It's like, space it out. So time management, the ability to understand when enough is enough in one particular outfit, doing one particular activity. If like they're working on the computer and all right, I got enough of angles from here, front, sides, low, tight, detail. Like we got it. Another one, but really the biggest lessons that I've ever learned is always with client interaction and rapport. The most important thing that a client can have going into the session is the confidence in knowing that they're going to get along with the person behind the camera. That is by far the most important thing. Why? Because if you are uncomfortable with that person that's behind the camera, your photos are going to look like crap because you're going to feel anxious, look fearful, be very overeager. It's going to look like garbage and you might as well throw all the photos out. So it's really important. And what I stress with my clients, and this was because I've learned from experience, to really qualify your photographer and on my end, qualify the customer if that's the right person for me. Mm-hmm. Because I have a very unique, distinct way of working with people. I like to make people laugh. I say a lot of slightly irreverent things, depending upon your level of sensitivity to that. And I don't apologize for it. I own it. I live it. I love it. It took me many years to own it. And now that's how I roll. And I don't, I'm not trying to be profane just to be profane, or I'm trying to be whatever over the top. It's like, no, it's just how I am. And it's important to have that rapport and that the person that's in front of the camera have that resonate with them so that we have a great time, because it makes a difference.
Yeah. Well, working one-on-one with clients, you have to have a lot of interpersonal skills. Like for you as the business owner, I can only imagine, right? Because you have to get them to show up good on the camera. So you have to be able to work with them. That makes total sense.
Yes. And everybody's different. Everybody has slightly different buttons to push in order to get the different types of emotions that they need in those images.
Yep. So tell me now about translatable skills, right? So your life back in TV, right, and working as a videographer. What are the most important skills that you're able to relate to what you do now? Like, what were some of the core? Yeah, let's just leave it at that.
Yeah, no, that's an awesome question. And I alluded to it before a little bit, but basically, I learned a lot. Let's start with being able to understand story and being able to extract story from a source that's not exactly the most polished, so to speak. We're talking about regular people on this show and we're talking about very highly sensitive and emotional stuff. And to be able to be in a room with someone to give them the space and inspire them to want to share all that stuff with all the emotion behind it. It's a huge skill. Then being able to capture that emotion, to have the timing and the patience and the ability to really get different types of composition, images, thinking in wide shots, medium shots, and close-ups in order to tell a story properly. I learned that. The opportunity to capture a scene from multiple angles in order to give a dynamic quality to the visual in order to complement the story itself. I mean, just that alone has been absolutely integral to the branded lifestyle portrait sessions that I conduct now. And then when you combine that with the headshot experience that I had learning under a very unbelievable headshot photographer, it's so tedious because you would think headshot, simple, stand there, make your face, be done. But the reality is that the most minute change in the muscles in your face completely changes the emotion of the image and how people will view it. So it's extremely tedious and very minute detail and head angles and this and jawline and eyes. And of course, if they're smiling or not and how does it feel. So when you combine that direct direction stuff in terms of getting people in the right position with their heads and everything with the video stuff, that's kind of where my background comes from.
Love it, man. Yeah. I mean, it's whatever we get into the details of like how we got to where we are today. And for particularly the entrepreneurs and the experts who are listening right now, they're kind of thinking, what is it that I can do? Like this whole show is about how to turn your expertise into income and seizing the different opportunities. And it's like, we don't realize that like there are so many skills that we already know that we can monetize. And it's like, that's why I always love to ask these experts and these entrepreneurs, like, what did you do, back in the day that you're still doing now? That's just an evolution of, what you did then and what it is today. And it's like, there's always skills that evolve that we use today. And a lot of times they're in completely different ways of utilization. So
absolutely. Yeah.
Well, John, man, I had a blast. I mean, we talked about your whole journey coming through, television and film as a, videographer and what you're doing now with branded lifestyle portrait photography and how you operate. Let's plug yourself for a little bit, right? Tell us where we can find you and let's drop some links.
Sure. Probably the easiest place that you can find me is my website, johndemato.com, where I have my blog that I post 3 times a week, where I send out a lot of fun stuff for people. So if you'd like to sign up for that, go right ahead. And the other big place that I'm on is Instagram. My handle is DeMato Photo. Come stop by, say hi, take a look, see what you can learn from the feed.
Awesome. John, I had a blast today. And I learned a ton. I know my audience is going to learn a ton just about, taking your experience and evolving it. And really, we all kind of hit this breaking point. I don't want to say breaking point, but there's always a point that's a turning point that's like, man, I need to make a change. I need to make a big change. I need to make a pivot in my life. And I appreciate you sharing that, sharing your pivot point that led you to taking that leap of faith and becoming an expert and really monetizing your experience. And so that is what we've got for today. So please go check out John. Let him know that you heard him on Experts Unleashed. Go check out his website. His stuff, his work is absolutely fantastic. I spent probably about 45 minutes last night going through all of it and pretty much sold myself that I needed your services. So, John, I appreciate it, man. And anything that you want to say before we wrap up?
Just to everybody out there who's trying to figure it out, it's hard, it's difficult, it's scary, but it's worth it. So keep thinking, keep figuring out what it is that's going to make you light up inside every day.
Love it, man. Okay, cool. So we'll wrap up for today. And John, appreciate your time. Thank you for sharing your story. And for everyone else, we will talk to you on the next episode. Take care. Thanks so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we look forward to giving you the next one. Now, if you want additional trainings and content outside of the podcast, I release exclusive video trainings on my Experts Unleashed YouTube channel. And if you'd like to come hang out with thousands of other fellow experts, join our Facebook group community where we do hangouts and webinars to help support you in your journey. Finally, if you'd like my personal help to develop, launch, or scale your business, contact me directly for private consulting opportunities to see if any spots are available. And you can find all of the information above at expertsunleashed.com.